There's no doubt that Vincent Price is an iconic character in pop culture. His face is known as the ultimate villain, and he was part of many incredible movies between the 40s and the 90s. Every Halloween I made a little tradition of watching as many Vincent Price's movies I can. Why? I don't know. And I know it's not Halloween anymore, but these movies are classics that are very entertaining, and it might be because of the presence of Mr. Price. These movies are not going to be ranked from good to bad or vice versa, and some are going to be horror and others more towards suspense. So, shall we? A 1964 film directed by Jacques Tourneur, produced by Anthony Carras, and written by Richard Matheson, that tells the story of the owner of a funeral parlor, a horrible drunken man without morals or principles, and that puts money over all, that says his business is not doing great because of the lack of dead people being, well, dead. So he plans a surprising spike in mortality with the help of his assistant. This movie is sort of a sequel to 1962's Tales of Terror, although that movie wasn't well received. And for some reason, the Comedy of Terror's critics have changed over time. There weren't many positive reviews when it first premiered, but over time, the movie had gathered an approval rating. There was actually a sequel of the Comedy of Terrors called Sweethearts and Horror, but because of the bad reception the movie had, Richard Matheson decided not to move forward with the project. A 1958 film produced and directed by Kurt Newman, based on a short story called The Fly by George Langelang. This movie takes us to Andre's laboratory and his obsession with the machine that has the capabilities of teletransport matter, but he needed to know if his beloved invention worked with humans. He decides to try the machine by himself, but a fly sneaked inside the invention alongside Andre, mixing their atoms in the process, transforming him into a creature and obligating him to hide parts of his body. He can only communicate with his wife Helen through dialed messages, begging her to find that fly that transmutes with him so he can return to his normal self. The reception of this film was quite positive. The New York Times newspaper reviewed the film as a quiet, tidy, and even unassuming film, which increases the almost unbearable tension throughout a simple suggestion, and was included in the top 1,000 best movies in history. A 1953 movie directed by Andre Le Toth, produced by Brian Foy, and based on a short story by Charles S. Belder called The Wax That Works from 1932. The story is about professor and sculptor Henry Jarrett that sees success in his museum filled with wax figures. But his partner tells him that by burning the place, they could cash the insurance of the sculptures. Henry says no, but his greedy partner burns the museum with Henry inside. He was later unable to use his hands because of it, so he finds a way to replenish his museum with new and improved wax sculptures. Critics were positive for the film, especially because this was a remake of a 1933 movie called Mystery of the Wax Museum, whose critics were not that great. There's a 2005 remake of The House of Wax that won 3 Teen Choice Awards in 2006, but honestly the best award was Paris Hilton's Golden Raspberry Awards from 2006 Worst Actress. A a 1960 film directed by Roger Corman, produced by Roger Corman and James H. Nicholson, and based on the 1839 Edgar Allan Poe story The Fall of the Usher House. Vincent Price plays the role of the jealous brother Roderick Usher, trying to break his sister Madeline's engagement. So when Madeline's fiancé Philip goes to the brother's mansion, Roderick does his best to try to convince Philip to end the relationship, and the reason is that the Ushers carry an unbearable hereditary disease that Roderick cannot take anymore. In 1961, The Fall of the House of Usher won a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer, given to Mark Damon. Also a Golden Laurel for Sleeper of the Year, and in 2005, the film was added to the National Film Preservation Board in the US as a part of the National Film Registry dedicated to preserving culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant films. A 1959 film directed by William Castle and produced by Rob White. A house with a gruesome past is the witness of this story. Frederick Lauren, following his wife's wishes, organizes a party but only invites 5 strangers to a rented mansion that in its past was the stage of a brutal murder, making it now haunted. So those 5 strangers, alongside Frederick and his wife, are supposed to stay the whole night with the incentive of winning $10,000 if they make it. But strange things start to happen and ghosts may not be involved in the madness. Reviews were positive, and maybe because, of course, the movie is really cool, but apparently when the movie was first released in the theaters, the director used a skeleton tied with wires at the side of the screen so it would fly across the screening, spooking the viewers. That's kinda cool, right? A 1961 film directed and produced by Roger Corman and based on an 1843 story by Edgar Allan Poe called The Pit and the Pendulum. In this movie, Vincent Price plays Nicolás Medina, a Spanish inquisitor's son whose wife inexplicably dies, making her brother travel to the castle where they both reside. He thinks that his sister was murdered by Medina, so he accommodates in the castle to investigate the supposed crime. Meanwhile, Medina thinks he's losing his mind because he can hear his wife's voice, begging him to go with her. Deceit, madness, and terror are exactly what the occupants of the castle will experience until the end. Roger Corman had directed and produced several Poe-based movies like The Fall of the House of Usher and The Mask of the Red Dead, but The Pit and the Pendulum is known to be the best of all of them. Especially if we talk about being on a tight budget, but still managed to build an impressive set for a horror movie. Impressive indeed. A 1940 film directed by Joe May and based on the 1851 Nathaniel Hawthorne novel The House of the Seven Gables. It's basically the tale of 2 brothers who, after returning to the family home to say goodbye to their father and finding out because of the multiple debts that as a family they had to pay, their beloved house of 7 Gables needed to be sold, Jeffrey decides to blame his brother Clifford for the murder of their father so he can keep the family fortune all for himself. Clifford is put in prison, separated from his beloved fiancée, but behind bars, he meets somebody that's linked to their lives, especially to the House of the Seven Gables and a curse that hasn't been forgotten. The movie received pretty good reviews at first, but something happened. This movie was released in 1940, but in 1947, right after World War II, the second Red Scare happened. The Red Scare was the fear of communism spreading in society. Red because of the communist flag. The first one, as you can imagine, occurred after World War I. So people started to speculate that the movie had hidden messages and radical politics in the script. That notion died down later on. A 1973 movie directed by Douglas Hickox and produced by John Kahn, a film that takes us to the mind of Edward Lionheart, a theater performer that's sick and tired of only bad reviews from the critics, so he decides to take matters into his own hands. After trying to take his own life because of it, the burning desire of revenge takes over him, and with the help of homeless people and his own daughter, plans to track down all of his critics and end their lives, just like in a Shakespearean play. The crazy part is that the critics were torn. Some liked it and thought that Price's interpretation was terrific, but others said that the script was too dreadfully long. No critics were harmed, though. A 1990 film directed and produced by Tim Burton with the help of Denise Di Novi in production. An eccentric inventor who lives in a castle at the top of the hill is almost done finishing his most awesome creation, a synthetic human named Edward. But the inventor dies before finishing Edward's hands, leaving him with really long metal scissors instead. Edward is all alone until a neighbor, Peg, spotted him and welcomes him in her house, where Edward will meet her husband and her daughter Kim. She will fear him at first, but later grow a beautiful relationship that will show kindness and compassion towards the unknown. But not all is nice in the world. Some neighbors are not happy with Edward being accepted as their own. A wonderful movie about accepting what's different from what we usually see or what we are used to. This amazing movie won a 1991 BAFTA Award for Best Production Design and a Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Movie. Well deserved. A 1944 film directed and produced by Otto Preminger, based on a 1943 novel by Vera Caspary named Laura. Side note though, Reuven Mamoulian started as the director of the movie, but after some undisclosed drama, the credits went to Mr. Preminger. A thriller that tells the story of the murder of Laura, a beautiful and successful executive that was shot in the head with a shotgun right in her apartment. After a lot of interrogations such as friends, colleagues, lovers, and family members, Detective McPherson obsesses with Laura, practically falling in love with her image and every puzzle piece he finds about her. But there's an interesting detail about Laura the detective did not expect. A critically acclaimed movie awarded an Oscar for Best Cinematography for Black and White in 1945. Give it a try, you won't regret it. In fact, give every single one of these movies a watch and tell me which one was your favorite and what other wasn't very much your taste. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you like the content, and if you didn't, please give me some feedback, I will love that. I post videos every Friday, so I will see you guys later. Stay safe.